From Workers Vanguard, number 316, October 29, 1982. Protesters rout Klan. Boston cops riot. KKK Run Out. Boston, October 16, 1982. Hooded and white-sheeted Ku Klux Klansmen were surrounded by an angry, jeering crowd of 1,500, pelted with eggs, and scared out of their wits, were run off the streets of Boston today. Not even a full-scale riot by scores of motorcycle and mounted police defending the Klansmen could disperse the protesters, who came determined to stop the fascists' provocation. It was the first solid anti-racist stand after years of unrelieved racist terror for black people in Boston. October 16 was a stunning blow against the cross-burners and lynchers that has been heard across the whole country. Under Reagan reaction, the KKK figures it has a license to spew out its race hate poison everywhere. A Klan-endorsed president in the White House, Democrats and Republicans united in an anti-Soviet war drive have made it open season on unions and minority rights at home. And Boston is where rampaging mobs of white racists took to the streets against busing. An ideal place for a Klan march, figured Imperial Wizard Bill Wilkinson. But the all-purpose hate-mongers of the KKK not only target blacks, Jews, communists, labor, Catholics are also high on their hit list. So when Wilkinson said he'd parade in front of City Hall on Saturday, they all came out to stop him. Irish from South Boston and Dorchester, Italians from East Boston and Somerville, students from Cambridge, blacks from Roxbury, unionists and others, mobilized in part by several left groups. The Klan never made it to the plaza. When the robe night riders appeared in broad daylight a block away from their target, hundreds of anti-Klan demonstrators surged forward and surrounded them and their police escort on all sides. Seconds later, the Klansmen were bombarded with eggs, tomatoes, bottles, garbage and anything else that could be found. The Klansmen ducked. Wilkinson was shown on nationwide TV cringing. The cops, meanwhile, began beating on anyone around, particularly news photographers. As the crowd threatened to overwhelm the tiny phalanx, the terrified, humiliated fascists were bundled into paddy wagons under police protection, not arrested and whisked away. Only the cops prevented them from being stripped of their KKK costumes and pounded into the pavement. As the police vans left, the protesters cheered their victory. The Klan would not parade its racist terror in the streets of Boston. But the fight was far from over. No sooner were the Klansmen gone than the racists in blue abruptly launched an obviously planned attack on the demonstration. Mounted police wheeled around their horses and charged into protesters in Cambridge Street. Motorcycle cops roared into the crowd in City Hall Plaza. Then came the club swinging, mess-spraying riot police, pushing demonstrators into other cops. There were police sharpshooters on the rooftops, plainclothesmen riddling the crowd. For many protesters there was no escape, everyone was fair game. Our own comrades barely escaped serious injury, some were maced, others blackjacked. 12 demonstrators were hospitalized, scores received lesser injuries. There were 2 arrests, but all the criminals. The cops and Klansmen went free. For hundreds of anti-Klan demonstrators, the bloody cop attack was a brutal lesson on the class nature of the capitalist state. Cries of fascists filled the plaza, directed this time at the police. WEEI radio broke into the World Series broadcast with bulletins on the police charge. Many thousands more were shocked. As they watched the scene on TV, everyone saw it. The cops, mortal enemies of blacks and workers, are defenders of the Ku Klux Klan. A couple from Somerville told Workers Vanguard, "When we came here, and people were chanting that the police were going to protect the Klan, we didn't believe it. I truly understand it now." The KKK attempt to march on Boston City Hall grew out of a television appearance by Wilkinson on a local station 2 days earlier, part of the KKK's campaign to gain a respectable image. As the Imperial Wizard spoke, members of the Progressive Labor Party, PL, and its International Committee Against Racism. In car, rose from the audience and pelted Wilkinson's pinstriped suit with eggs. One PL supporter made it to the stage and tried to throw a few punches as the show stopped. Infuriated, the KKK terrorist leader on Friday morning demanded the arrest of the anti-racist protesters and vowed to stage a provocation the next day by parading in full Klan regalia. In response to Wilkinson's threat, PL and Inkar announced a counter-demonstration at City Hall Plaza. Later Friday afternoon, the All People's Congress, APC, a vehicle for the Workers' World Party, WWP, announced an anti-Klan rally at the same time and place. An APC leaflet advertised a noon Saturday press conference with Black State Representative Mel King. The NAACP closed down its office and told people to stay home on the 16th. On Friday evening, the Spartacist League and Spartacus Youth League SLSYL held a forum on Black liberation through socialist revolution, with guest speaker Charles Dubois, a militant auto worker from Detroit, where we announced a class struggle contingent for the Saturday demonstration. Most of the audience stayed to make posters and calls were made to mobilize Spartacist supporters. Mel King never showed up at the APC conference, as Boston's establishment black leadership entirely boycotted this crucial protest to stop the KKK terrorists. By 1 p.m. Saturday, a few hundred anti-Klan demonstrators had gathered at City Hall. When a contingent of several dozen SLSYL supporters arrived, the police demanded that our signs be taken off the wooden sticks, which are standard in Boston demonstrations. They clearly wanted protesters defenseless against what was coming. WWP spokesmen, who have frequently resorted to anti-communist violence to exclude Spartacists, this time invited the SLSYL to join a picket line, noting that we had the largest contingent present. Many youths from white working-class districts seldom associated with anti-racist protests also showed up. One group carried a sign saying, "Dorchester and South Boston says Klan keep out." Some Irish kids brought homemade signs saying, "Ku Klux sucks" and "Fucks the Klux." Meanwhile, a dozen or so PL and Inkar supporters showed up chanting death to the Klan. First they refused to enter the picket by now up to 300, then briefly marched on the line only to withdraw again to the sidelines. While the sectarian PL Stalinists have been known to leave anti-Klan protests rather than participate in any united front action, Workers' World sought to build a classic popular front with representatives of the capitalist class. From their podium, they called upon strike-breaking Governor Ed King and Mayor Kevin White to join them. All People's Congress signs demanded, "Roll back Reaganism." A veiled call to vote Democratic in November. Most ominously, APC leaders invited Curtis Sliwa's Guardian Angels to join the line. The Angels are a lumpen vigilante group that stomps through New York City subways and has spread to other cities. We have called them potentially a paramilitary auxiliary to the cops and terrorizing the ghettos. The sinister presence of the Guardian Angels at today's demonstration was clear. They appeared to concentrate on forming a cordon in front of PL just minutes before the Klan arrived. As the Klan marchers neared City Hall Plaza shortly before 2 p.m., the crowd saw what was happening and the picket line broke, as militants rushed up to stop the KKK. At this point, Workers' World bullhorners tried to stop them, saying, "Stay where you are, keep the picket line going." That's not the way to fight the Klan, stay on the picket line. Thus they proved that their call to stop the Klan was just empty rhetoric. But the militant elements in the demonstration ignored their advice. The cops were not able to drive away the anti-Klan protesters, despite their vicious attacks. At one point the cop motorcycles headed straight for the middle of the Spartacist contingent in the hopes of breaking it up. But every time there was an opening, the crowd simply flowed around the cops. After 10 to 15 minutes of the police riot, demonstrators returned to the plaza, where many regrouped around the SLSYL banner reading, No trust in capitalist politicians, troops or cops. Black labor defense against racist attacks. In particular, blacks were attracted by the Spartacist soapboxing, as union militants from Detroit Auto, Chicago Steel and New York Maritime called for class struggle to smash the fascists. Many joined in our chants, "Smash the Klan, this is the hour. Labor and blacks have got the power." Scandalously, at this point Bob Avakian's Revolutionary Communist Party, RCP, made common cause with anti-communist racists against the Trotskyist SLSYL. When Spartacist supporters stressed the duty to defend the Soviet Union against Reagan's imperialist war drive, an RCP bullhorner began screaming about Soviet social imperialism, while a clot of white punks cheered, "Right, what about Poland?" When SL comrades pointed out to black militants that the Avakianites had joined the Ruhr racists in opposing busing in 1974, the RCPer stammered that was a wrong position. But while these Jim Crow socialists say they've changed their line on busing, they still line up with Ronald Reagan and the KKK on Russia. The battle for Boston busing. Boston is not Klan territory, yet in recent years it has been a hotbed of racist hatred. The reason is historical. In the 1800s, rich Boston merchants refused to allow heavy industry, such as steel and auto, into Boston proper because the Yankees wanted to maintain its serenity. The city was scarcely touched by the CIO organizing drives of the 1930s. After the decline of textiles and shoemaking, major industry was restricted to outlying areas: General Electric inland, General Motors in Framingham, General Dynamics in Quincy. Unlike Detroit and the Midwest generally, there was no mass migration from the South. So today, while non-union high-tech industries flourish along routes 128 and 495, Boston's Irish and Italian white ghettos have an even lower standard of living than Black Roxbury. Who would the KKK appeal to today? The Portuguese. This history set the stage for the bitter struggle over Boston busing. In 1974, thousands of segregationist bigots led by Louise Day Hicks Rohr marauded through South Boston and marched on City Hall denouncing so-called forced busing. Racist punks stoned school buses bringing courageous black children to integrate all-white schools. Paramilitary fascistic outfits like the South Boston Marshals fielded vigilante squads to terrorize minorities. It was this mobilization of race hate in Boston that spelled the defeat of school integration throughout the North. Suburban liberals had subjected the city to a savage racial polarization by trying to bus poor blacks into the white Irish and Italian ghettos, with a plan that provided no significant educational gains. But to be for or against busing became a plebiscite on racism. As supporters of racial integration in every area of social life, the Spartacist League fought unequivocally to smash the racist offensive. We called to implement busing, even though it is a somewhat artificial democratic demand that by itself cannot bring about real integration and quality education for oppressed minorities. We called for extending busing to the suburbs and for low-rent, racially integrated public housing. As for the hardcore anti-busing bigots, said the SL, they must be crushed by mass mobilization of black organizations, trade unions, socialist groups and all other forces prepared to defend black school children. Yet in the midst of this race terror, with the lives of black school children threatened, the bulk of the so-called left was just as treacherous as the black and white liberals. While the SL campaigned with mass leaflets for labor black defense, the reformist Socialist Workers' Party, SWP, opposed this as make-believe. The supposedly realistic SWP called instead for federal troops, the armed fist of the racist, capitalist state, as a real, meaningful solution. We pointed out that if troops were brought in, it would be to enforce a segregationist law and order, and prevent any organized defense by black and union militants. Black liberation through socialist revolution. In 1974 and again in 1982, the Boston black masses were sacrificed to racist reaction by the black and white liberals. The reformist phony socialists called on the racist, capitalist state to send troops to enforce busing in 1974, and to ban the Klan in 1982. Meanwhile, as any Marxist could have predicted, the bosses, cops and troops repeatedly attack those who fight against the race terrorists. Only the Trotskyist Spartacist League has fought for the program of independent labor black mobilization, so sorely needed in 1974 and the key to today's victory. This means a struggle against the capitalist order which breeds racist reaction. Today, as the KKK preys on the frustrations of poor whites suffering from massive unemployment and the catastrophic decay of American cities, the Trotskyists call for factory occupations, sit-down strikes, against plant shutdowns, for unlimited, unconditional unemployment insurance, for a 30-hour workweek for 40 hours pay and to provide jobs for all. While dashiki Democrats and reformist hustlers lead the black masses down to defeat with illusions of community control, the Spartacist League fights for a program of revolutionary integrationism and a multiracial vanguard socialist party. We seek to harness the power of labor in the struggle for black equality, fighting within the unions against the poisonous racism, which cripples united class struggle, and for class-conscious leadership, to oust the pro-capitalist bureaucrats. This is a road of long, hard struggle, to mobilize the workers' movement, as the vanguard of all the oppressed. But it is the only one, which can liberate us all. For labor black mobilizations against the Klan. Break with the Democrats, black and white. Build a workers' party to fight for a workers' government. For black liberation through socialist revolution.